Alright, it's time for my early Oscar predictions for the below the line categories. Hi, it's Brian. This is the awards contender, and in today's video, we're not going to talk about all the below the line categories. We'd be here a while, so I've chosen 8. We're going to talk about cinematography, costume design, film editing, makeup and hairstyling, original score, production design, sound, and visual effects. And we're going to talk about these categories in alphabetical order. So we'll start with cinematography. Are you ready? Here we go. So right off the top, I should make clear there are 4 titles, 4 films you're going to hear a lot in this video. Barbie, Killers of the Flower Moon, Oppenheimer, and Poor Things. These 4 films are going to do very well on Oscar nominations morning, not only in the top of the line categories, but in the below the line categories. These 4 films are going to show up all over the place. They're not going to get into every category, but we're going to see them often, and that starts right here in cinematography. I do think we're going to see at least 3 of those 4 movies here. I would say locks for cinematography at this moment are Killers of the Flower Moon, Oppenheimer, and Poor Things. Those are the 3 movies that are going to be battling it out for the win. Oppenheimer is probably in first place, but right behind it is Killers of the Flower Moon and Poor Things. The question then becomes what takes slots 4 and 5. I am feeling pretty good about Maestro, the mixture of the black and white and color. There are many lovely things that Bradley Cooper does with the camera in that film, so I think Maestro is in. And then the 5th place slot could go to Barbie. Barbie did get into cinematography at Critics' Choice, and it's a lovely movie to look at, so that would make sense to me. It's definitely hovering around the 5th place slot. I could also see The Zone of Interest being a surprise nominee in this category too. That film has amazing cinematography, but I'm gonna go with kind of a wild card here. This might be this film's only Oscar nomination. I mean, we shall see. There might be a surprise or 2 in store, but I will be devastated on Oscar nominations morning if Saltburn gets nothing. It's not looking very good for original screenplay, the acting categories, picture. Like, I don't know. I'm not feeling it right now, but the one category I could see Saltburn showing up is in cinematography. I think the cinematography and the production design of Saltburn are outstanding, and I do think Academy members are going to recognize that, at least in cinematography. I wouldn't say I'm super confident in this, but I am feeling like Saltburn will get something. So, my early Oscar predictions for Best Cinematography are Killers of the Flower Moon, Maestro, Oppenheimer, Poor Things, and Saltburn. Next up is Best Costume Design. Now, this category could go a couple different ways. It could just nominate the 4 big titles: Barbie, Killers of the Flower Moon, Oppenheimer, Poor Things, and then there's room for maybe a surprise 5th place slot, something that comes out of left field. Like, I was thinking about maybe Priscilla could get in here. Priscilla has some great costume design. Wonka? Like, are we underestimating Wonka? I do feel like that film will get into the Oscars somewhere. It might just be in one category, maybe 2 or 3. So I'm definitely feeling Wonka is an alternate right now in costume design. This is kind of a tricky category to predict this year because there are at least 7 or 8 kind of obvious titles that could get in. And it just kind of depends on, are they going to go with the big contenders, the movies that are going to get into a ton of categories? Or might they pick a couple films that aren't really getting recognized anywhere else? That could happen too. So Priscilla and Wonka have a shot, as does Maestro. I was thinking about including Maestro here, but I don't know. Up against Oppenheimer, Killers of the Flower Moon, I feel like Maestro might miss in costume design. Barbie is definitely getting in, and that's probably going to win. I mean, the costume design of that movie is extraordinary. I can't imagine that one missing. And then same thing goes for Poor Things. I do think Poor Things and Barbie are going to be duking this one out. Now, I don't know how well The Color Purple is going to do on Oscar nominations morning. It might just show up in supporting actress for Daniel Brooks, maybe picture, and then potentially 1 or 2 technical categories. I do think the one technical category The Color Purple is going to make it into is costume design. I mean, just looking at the trailer, knowing the history of this project, like costume design feels right for The Color Purple. So my early Oscar predictions for Best Costume Design are Barbie, The Color Purple, Killers of the Flower Moon, Oppenheimer, and Poor Things. Next we have film editing, and to be perfectly honest, I'm gonna go kind of predictable with this category. I'm not going to include a couple wild cards like a Saltburn, like a Past Lives. Can Past Lives get into any of the technical categories? Film editing, original score, something? I'm not going to talk about my favorite film of the year really at all in this video outside of this moment, because I don't think Past Lives gets into any technical categories, sadly. I would say outside of a late-breaking surge for a movie, outside of a huge shocker, I do think film editing is going to be kind of the standard choices. The 4 main movies I talked about at the beginning of this video, and Maestro. I mean, these might be the 5 films that do the best on Oscar nominations morning, and I do think they can all get into film editing. I do not see a surprise happening here. I mean, on a couple prediction websites, I've seen Anatomy of a Fall, The Zone of Interest, and The Holdovers mentioned for film editing. Is The Holdovers going to make it into any of the technical categories? I feel like it should. It should get into 1 or 2, right? But as I just realized a few moments ago, I'm not predicting The Holdovers to get in anywhere in below the line categories, which feels kind of wrong, I guess, but that's the way I'm thinking right now. So in the comments below, feel free to convince me I'm wrong about this, but I do think in this category, we're just going to get the main 5. My early Oscar predictions for film editing are Barbie, Killers of the Flower Moon, Maestro, Oppenheimer, and Poor Things. And then in makeup and hairstyling, we carry over 3 of the titles I've mentioned already a lot. Barbie, Maestro, and Poor Things. Those 3 are getting into makeup and hairstyling. I'm almost 100%. I feel like Maestro has a pretty good shot of winning in this category, and then Poor Things will also give it a run for its money. So the question becomes, what takes slots 4 and 5? Now there is a late-breaking 2023 release I do feel like is going to get into the Oscars in some respect. It might show up in a couple top-of-the-line categories, including Best Actor, potentially. But if there's one below-the-line category, I'm feeling pretty good about its chances. It is makeup and hairstyling, The Iron Claw. The Iron Claw, I do think, is going to show up somewhere, and makeup and hairstyling feels right to me, so I'm including that here. Again, if there's enough love for Priscilla, I could see that film getting in here. I mean, the way Kaylee Spaney ages throughout the movie is impressive. Like, at the end, considering how far she's come in age from the first scene, like, it's pretty amazing. But I feel like that work might be too subtle to be recognized. Same thing with Oppenheimer. We get some prosthetics on the actors at certain points in the movie. But again, very subtle work, and I don't know if it's enough for it to get into makeup and hairstyling. As I said before, I do think Wonka is going to show up in a couple technical categories, and this one feels right to me. I feel like Wonka will be recognized in makeup and hairstyling. It's a big, fanciful production, so that's the one I'm feeling here for the 5th place slot. My early Oscar predictions for Best Makeup and Hairstyling are Barbie, The Iron Claw, Maestro, Poor Things, and Wonka. Next is Best Original Score, one of my favorite below-the-line categories every year, and I feel like this year we're going to get a couple animated films make it in. I mean, the obvious choices I would say are Killers of the Flower Moon, that's getting into original score, Oppenheimer, which is looking more and more likely to win in this category. Oppenheimer is also in. And then Poor Things I also think is going to make it in. That is such an original score. I love the music in Poor Things. So I think that's in as well. And then I would say the other 2 slots are going to go to animated movies. Basically the 2 movies that are going to be duking it out for Best Animated Feature, The Boy and the Heron and Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. I think the scores of those films are extraordinary and they're already being recognized by some awards bodies. So even though it's possible Barbie could get in here, The Zone of Interest has a very unique score. I could also see that sliding in. And then what about John Williams for Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny? Like, he got in for the last 3 Star Wars movies, like just based on his name. Could he also slip in? I do not think that's outside the realm of possibility, but he wasn't nominated for the 4th Indiana Jones, so I'm gonna say no to that, at least right now. I do think slots 4 and 5 are going to go to those animated films. So my early Oscar predictions for Best Original Score are The Boy and the Heron, Killers of the Flower Moon, Oppenheimer, Poor Things, and Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. Next up is Best Production Design, and once again, we have our 4 favorites. Barbie, Killers of the Flower Moon, Oppenheimer, and Poor Things. Production Design feels like those 4 films are going to make it in. Like, I can't imagine one of them missing. I would say this category is going to come down to Poor Things versus Barbie. Those seem to be the likeliest winners, but Killers of the Flower Moon and Oppenheimer also have terrific production design. So once again, the question becomes, what takes that 5th place slot in this category? I mean, I could see Maestro making it in here, as well as The Zone of Interest. Like, the production design in The Zone of Interest plays such an integral role to that movie, to the narrative, but I'm going to go with the film that, kind of like Saltburn and Cinematography, I feel like this movie is only going to get 1 Oscar nomination, and it's going to happen in production design, Ridley Scott's Napoleon. This movie kind of crashed and burned with critics, with audiences, but it's a big spectacle. I feel like Napoleon shows up somewhere. And if it were to get 1 Oscar nomination, I feel like production design is where it will show up, and I do think it's going to happen. So my early Oscar predictions for Best Production Design are Barbie, Killers of the Flower Moon, Napoleon, Oppenheimer, and Poor Things. Alright, 2 to go, and next one is Best Sound, and once again, I feel like we're gonna have a couple of our favorites. Oppenheimer, I think, is going to win in this category. The use of sound in Oppenheimer is so extraordinary, spectacular, haunting. Like, the way sound is used throughout Oppenheimer is undeniable. So that's the movie to beat in this category for sure. I would say Maestro will probably be in 2nd place here, and Poor Things, once again, will make it. I'm still not sure how well The Zone of Interest will do on Oscar nominations morning, but it's gotta get into Best Sound. Like, the sound design work in that movie is on another level. Like, even if it doesn't show up in any other technical category, which I don't think will happen, I do think The Zone of Interest is going to do better on Oscar nominations morning than some of us are thinking. It's going to make it into Best Sound. Like, a snub there would be very annoying. Now, I do think one category Killers of the Flower Moon is going to miss is Best Sound. Like, it's definitely circling 5th place, 6th place. But I don't know, I'm not feeling that one. Same thing with The Color Purple. It makes sense to me a musical would get into Best Sound, but ever since they did away with the 2 sound categories and made it just 1, I don't think it's that obvious necessarily for a musical to make it in. So I'm not predicting The Color Purple right now. I'm going to go with Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. The sound design in that animated film is amazing, and it deserves to be recognized. So my early Oscar predictions for Best Sound are Maestro, Oppenheimer, Poor Things, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, and The Zone of Interest. And finally, our last category in this prediction video, Best Visual Effects. Now, I'm pretty sure all of us thought Dune Part 2 was going to win this one, and when they pushed it to 2024, it was like, okay, so what is going to win visual effects now? It's not super obvious. Oppenheimer, the big Oppenheimer, didn't even make the shortlist, so that's not getting in here. Two of the films I've been talking about all throughout this video, I do think make it into this category, Barbie and Poor Things. I think those two are pretty safe in visual effects. And then I think the other 3 slots will go to films that aren't really going to show up in any other category. The only one that might get 2 or 3 nominations is Wonka. I do think Wonka is going to make it into visual effects. And then 2 films I think are only going to be recognized in this category are The Creator and Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. The visual effects in The Creator are stunning. I do think they will be recognized by the Academy, and same goes for Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. The first 2 installments in that trilogy both showed up in this category. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 was embraced by critics and audiences just like the first 2 films, so I do think that is also going to make it into this category. My early Oscar predictions for Best Visual Effects are Barbie, The Creator, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, Poor Things, and Wonka. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. And let me know in the comments below what you think is going to receive Oscar nominations in the below the line categories. Do you agree with my picks, or do you think I have it all wrong? We'll see you next time at the Awards Contender.